Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Monday, August 31st, 2020. Thank you all for tuning in to tonight's episode here. Let's take a look at our space weather. Well, solar wind speeds have been on the rise again, 536.8 kilometers per second with a density of 8.2. And if you look at our star, we are blank once again. That's now 10 days in a row without sunspots. 166 days here in 2020. That's 68% of 2020 without sunspots, so pretty deep minimum. Our KP indices sitting at a 4 right now and a 24-hour max of a 5. And yes, we had another G1 storm. We'll go over to thegrandssolarminimum.com and check out the stats on that as well. Our TCI is coming in at 3.10. That's up from the last time we recorded it. And a lot of that has to do with increasing solar wind speeds that heats up the ionosphere. And I do believe that affects the very top of our atmosphere's temperature as well. So, and we've had several days of geomagnetic unrest. In fact, for the past 3 days, Earth's polar magnetic field has been in a simmering state of unrest, bookended by minor G1 class geomagnetic storms on August 28th and now August 31st. As a result, Arctic skies are coming alive with auroras. And again, with wind streams still in the 500 kilometers per second as we speak, this also will continue to be the case at least through September 2nd, and we are expected solar wind on that day as well. So, coronal holes causing these solar wind streams. We get coronal holes when the corona is weak, and therefore we are getting a ton of coronal hole, which gives us higher solar wind speeds, and therefore continuing to show us geomagnetic unrest. Let's go over to thegrandssolarminimum.com and check out some of our space weather stuff here real quick. Bear with me, folks. Oh, it's actually there. All right, so solar X-ray flux up and down, still minor. So very minimal conditions. And there you see the KP indices flirting with the 4 for a while. We have been in 2 different storms thus far, just in the past 2 days. And we continue to see that chance of KP hitting that 5 once again. So there's a chance for another minor G1, possibly a pop-up. Now, this is the 3rd G1 storm of 2020, and it's August, actually about to turn September. So not a lot of G1 storms this year. Also, when you look at, even if we get another one here in the next couple of days, start September off, still 4 in 9 months of the year so far. So again, very minor solar activity that we are experiencing that still qualifies minimum conditions. There is our SDO. Let's take a look at it a little bit. And we will see right now just that northern coronal hole. And that is up here. That is the next stream of solar wind that we could expect. But that's going to affect just the northern part of our magnetic field. So it shouldn't be too much of an impact. But I can say this, I have seen it where just the sudden jolt of these solar wind streams hitting the magnetic field does create a little bit of seismic jolt as well. So at the least, we could probably expect another 6.5 earthquakes, maybe a couple of them, and we have a couple of those to talk about tonight in the headline section. Let's take a look and see into the crystal ball. Actually, this one's green, but still, we get a look at what we might be dealing with in the near future. And as you can see, nothing yet, but if you get behind the eastern limb, there's a couple of bright regions that are right on the 30. So we're thinking, in the southern part anyway, we're thinking that this is a good chance to see our next sunspot. And at this current location, I'd say it's about 3 to 5 days. I don't know, well, 3 to 4 days possibly away from piercing that eastern limb. So we'll keep our eyes on that. But let me let's show you the big picture here. Zoom this out just a little bit. You guys can see them really well in this section, and it's at the negative 110-ish, somewhere in that area. Remember, 0 is Earth facing. The negative 90 is where the line, the imaginary line, is for the eastern limb. So whenever we see a sunspot over here, that's when SPACEWEATHER.com and SPACEWEATHERlive.com also confirm sunspots when we have those properties when it pierces the eastern limb. But we might have 2 different areas. Now, I've seen more impressive regions than this. And although they look like the usual suspect, we have to just wait and see the next couple of days. All right, I'm looking in the chat, and that's my biggest problem here. And I know a lot of you are probably here for the Zharkova in the title. So Valentina Zharkova, who we are totally in support of, obviously, 130,000%. And we've talked about lately how you have to dig for information. And this is an editorial here published on August 4th. Modern grand solar minimum will lead to terrestrial cooling. And over the last couple of broadcasts, I have been talking about some information that I didn't once see before, but saw, took a look at it, and then reevaluated kind of where we stand as far as this grand solar minimum. Now, we've talked to Zharkova several times, a couple times in an interview, and she has told us in 2017 and in 2019 that we are in the beginning of the grand solar minimum. And this editorial kind of confirms that its actual entrance into the grand solar minimum is June of this year, 2020. Now, I see someone in here talking about the paper and the correction. And I can promise you this, guys. We are going to have an in-depth conversation. I can't really talk about when, but I can tell you that there will be a conversation that will clear this up. And if you guys have been following this channel for a while, you know that if something doesn't smell right, we vet it. And if it comes out dirty, it's gone. And all I can tell you guys is that it's nowhere in that department of being thrown out. So there will be a clarification. But for now, and all I can say about the errors in those calculations in her paper that got retracted, the errors are so small and minuscule, it doesn't affect the outcome like some of these AGW who are bullying her are claiming. Nonetheless, over the past couple of broadcasts, I have been displaying information that is showing us that this is going to be a lot colder than I thought it was going to be. Thanks to Valentina Zharkova and her work talking about super grand solar minimums, I learned a little bit more about grand cycles, which are around 350 to 415 years apart. And I understand the strengths of the super grand solar minimum and how it works over the 2,000 years. The first 1,000 years, believe it or not, the magnetic field is on the stronger side. And in the last half of the cycle, it gets weaker until it gets to the start of a new 2,000 and it starts working its way back up. But then I'll also learned about these 350 to 415 year cycles called grand cycles. And reading this editorial and looking at the information that she has given us, on top of what I was talking about with sunspot counts, and her confirming what we've been talking about with magnetic waves or magnetic fields canceling each other out, this is, to me, accidental the way I've stumbled across this. The way the dots are being connected to me is blowing my mind, and I hope everybody else is having that aha moment as well. I did leave the link in our description for this. And this is a very good 101 on the work that she is doing here. And I'll read a little bit from this. It says, in this editorial, I will demonstrate with newly discovered solar activity proxy magnetic field that the sun has entered into the modern grand solar minimum 2020 through 2053. That will lead to significant reduction of solar magnetic field, significant, not just reduction, but significant, okay? An activity like during Maunder minimum, leading to noticeable reduction of terrestrial temperature. Now, before I continue, I want to mention that the effects that she's talking about that are going to be a noticeable reduction in temperatures is based just what the sun is going to do to the climate. It's not factoring in the volcanoes that we could see in this new modern grand solar minimum that could also contribute to cooling even further. So this is very significant, and everything's really kind of tying in. And what we're looking at, and again, not to be a guy to scare anybody, but we happen to be alive where we are in a beginning of another grand cycle, like the one that the Maunder minimum was in. Now, I know for months I've stated that I believe this will be somewhere between a Dalton and a Maunder minimum when it comes to this next grand solar minimum. Folks, I can tell you right now, I realize that is now just a safe prediction. It's a safe window. If you say between Dalton and Maunder, you're probably right. That's the safe bet. But reading this and looking at the stuff that Mari's brought to my attention, other things that I found as well, and then now looking at this, it feels like that, and she's even confirming it here as well. We're looking at activity like during the Maunder minimum. And she goes in about, what happened during the Maunder minimum. What kind of stuff, what kind of weather phenomena were we seeing? I also want to read real quick. This is, like I said, this is a good 101 basic stuff here. Signs of solar activity are seen in cyclic 11-year variations of a number of sunspots on the solar surface using average monthly sunspot numbers as a proxy of solar activity for the past 150 years. Solar cycles were described by the actions of the solar dynamo mechanism in the solar interior generating magnetic ropes at the bottom of solar convective zone. These magnetic ropes travel through solar interior appearing on the solar surface or photosphere as sunspots, indicating the footprints where these magnetic ropes are embedded into the photosphere. And reading on here, talking about the strength of this upcoming grand solar minimum. And it appears that the amplitude of the summary solar magnetic field shown in the summary curve is reducing towards solar cycle 24 and 25 and becoming nearly zero in solar cycle 26. Now, the reason why I'm picking through this is because we have been looking at information from NOAA. And this is how we know her work is correlating with all this. If NOAA is predicting near zero sunspots, okay, how do you think sunspots appear in the first place on the sun? The magnetic field. The strength in the magnetic field. So the weaker the magnetic field, the less sunspots you will see. The stronger the magnetic field, the more sunspots you will see. So if Valentina Zharkova is telling us that the magnetic field will become nearly zero in solar cycle 26, it's reducing right now between 24 and 25, and nearly zero in cycle 26. Well, that makes sense. The weakest of the magnetic field in this cycle is going to appear in 2030s through 2043. It looks like the strongest at this point, before coming out of this modern grand solar minimum sometime in 2053. I've also seen reports that people are saying this could be 70 years, not just the short 30. I think Zharkova is being respectful and not trying to be overdoing it by sticking with her 30-year projection. But the solar activity getting as low as it is, it's going to take a few more cycles for it to come out of this grand solar minimum and back to normal solar cycle activity. Again, I left this link in the description of this video. She starts talking about the grand cycles again. Curves reveals appearance of grand solar cycles of 350 to 400 years caused by the interference of two magnetic waves, which, up here in this diagram, we are in now. In the conclusion, she talks more about TSI. Again, this is just stuff from the sun that's going to create drops in temperature without figuring in cooling from volcanic eruptions and other natural phenomena. There's something here at the bottom I wanted to read real quick. I'm just skimming through this. Okay. In this editorial, this is the conclusions. In this editorial, I have demonstrated that the recent progress with understanding a role of solar background magnetic field is defining solar activity with quantifying the observed magnitudes of magnetic field at different times allowed us to enable reliable long-term prediction of solar activity on a millennium timescale. This approach revealed a presence not only of 11-year cycles, but also grand solar cycles with durations of 350 to 400 years. Again, the Maunder minimum was a grand cycle. Now this one is a grand cycle. These grand cycles are always separated by grand solar minima of Maunder minimum type. This is the beginning of that next grand cycle. Therefore, according to her work, these grand cycles are always separated by grand solar minima of a Maunder minimum type, which is telling us that we are going to be in for a very strong grand solar minimum. And if anything, as the information continues to come out, more verifiable sources, I should say, than just your typical rumor-based information. But this is fact-based. This is proof. Zharkova does a great job at showing us this. Pretty transparent. So we're getting a 0.22% decrease from TSI, which could decrease the average terrestrial temperature by 1 to 1.5 degrees. That is what the Maunder minimum saw. Remember, the Thames River was frozen over many times during that period of the Maunder minimum. The discovery of double dynamo action in the sun brought us a timely warning about the upcoming grand solar minimum. And I'll be honest with you guys, having a couple years to kind of chew on this information, I am also, I understand the dynamo theory a lot more than I did before. I can tell you that. And it makes more sense at this point. When solar magnetic field and its magnetic activity will be reduced. Let me rewind this. This discovery of double dynamo action in the sun brought us a timely warning about the upcoming grand solar minimum. 1. When solar magnetic field and its magnetic activity will be reduced by 70%. This period has started in the sun in 2020 and will last until 2053. During this grand solar minimum, one would expect to see a reduction of, on the average, terrestrial temperature by up to 1 degree Celsius. during the periods of solar minima between cycles 25 and 26 and 26 and 27 in the decade of 2031-2043. So, technically, we are in the grand solar minimum as we are in that period of where we are going to start seeing this magnetic field reduction starting now and moving forward. And just like what we said that NOAA has hiding their information, they're also waving a warning, but they hide it. They don't put it out there for you to find like that. So NOAA and Zharkova, who we highly respect here and agree with her work, she is also indicating between 2031 and 2043, we are going to see conditions that are going to match that of the Maunder minimum. That's a rough decade and a few years. And not forgetting that what we're going to be going through leading up to this, the drastic drop in sunspots and TSI, to me, drastic. Up to 70% of the sun's magnetic field will be reduced. Folks, that's a lot. And when the magnetic field, this is why we are talking about cosmic radiation increase as well. This is exactly why. So, what an eye-opening last week of August that we have had. Thanks to David over there. And it all started with David tagging Mari with the sunspot counts between 2030 and 2040. Mari relaying that to me as well. And then we find more evidence with descriptions in NOAA's impact section of cosmic radiation. It admits a cooling trend would start if these theories are true, which right now we're showing you a lot of proof of that. And then today, taking a deeper look at this editorial that came out actually August 4th, actually a few weeks ago. But taking a closer look at this, guys, and we've been, or myself, I've been the type of person that has said, you know, I think this is going to be more like a Dalton minimum or slightly stronger. This paper and the sunspot numbers that we saw line up, and this is definitely, in my opinion, according to the data, according to Zharkova's work, it does appear that the next grand solar minimum right now that we're in is a part of this next grand cycle. And according to her paper and her work, these grand cycles are separated always with a Maunder type minimum. And we are now in that grand solar minimum that separates the grand cycles. This is it right here. I mean, look, you learn something every day, right? You think you understand it. You think you know what's going on, and then you find more evidence, and then it takes you a little further. And just like with this paper here. Goodness gracious. All right. Sorry about that, folks. So, with that being said, guys, this is no show to sound the alarm and, you know, kick up the fear a notch. This gives us time, and like Zharkova has told us in the past, this gives us time to get ready for what's ahead, challenging. We're still going to see weather that's going to change, wild temperature swings, insane rain amounts and snow amounts and earthquakes and volcanoes. And we're not even talking about those as much. But those are coming too. So if we could expect at least 1 degree Celsius of temperature dropping, okay, without the effect of a earthquake or I'm sorry, a volcano eruption that gets really high into the stratosphere, That could drop in another half degree Celsius, maybe another full degree. Nonetheless, all signs are pointing ahead. We are heading into a cooling period that is caused by the sun and is natural and happens. And right now, we are alive to be a part of witnessing this cycle. And it's not going to be easy. I just saw in the chat, Veg in there. And the question is, how do you get ready? And I think after seeing this information in the last couple of days, there is going to be more focus on prep. There is going to be more focus on growing. There's going to be more focus on that kind of, even if it's just a little 60-second clip of how to make a solar water heater. This channel, you're right. We have to do a better job at getting our people prepared. And it takes effort from us and people across the community to share ideas. That's why we have a live chat during the broadcast. The hope is that everybody is like-minded and sharing the same ideas and tricks on how to grow and how to sustain for yourself and your family. Because after what we're seeing right now in the last week or so, I mean, we've been doing this channel for 4 years. It's not a surprise. But what I'm trying to get out is that the closer we are getting to this period, the more rock solid evidence we are seeing that we are going to be experiencing a Maunder minimum type grand solar minimum that begins right now, but you need to be really aware around 2028 and beyond. Right now, we're still going to have the kind of weather we're going to see this year, the year following up to 2025 is going to be very similar to the past 3 years in this minimum. Okay. I'll just put that there. It's not going to be much different from what we've already seen because we're heading to a weak max. And once we get to that weak max, it's not going to last very long. And solar activity will begin to decline again. And we'll notice it this time around coming into the next minimum as we get later in this decade. And I know some of you are probably watching like, gee whiz, a decade away from really. No, I'm telling you right now, we are still going to see crop problems from freak storms. In fact, this wraps up what I was wanting to go over in this paper. They've updated the number of acres that have been damaged by that derecho. Now, when I first reported on this story, Matt out there in Nebraska, a good, well-trusted farmer, he brought this to my attention and told me 10 million acres. So we went with that. And there was a lot of conflicting reports. I think Watchers actually put one that said 1 million acres. And some people actually commented and said, no. It was nowhere near 10 million acres. Well, there's been a correction. And 14 million acres of crops were affected by this derecho. And this was the storm back on August 10th. So that's about a tenth of the U.S. corn supply right there. A tenth of the crops. And we had a decent plant this year. And this is what I've been warning about after we had that good plant. Now we have to be on guard for these crazy storms, these wild swing in temperatures and intensity of storms. And we had one earlier in the month of August that wiped out 14 million acres of crops. On top of that, we're getting bad wheat numbers from the UK. Bread prices will be on the rise. And look, groceries are already on the rise because of what's happening with the pandemic. So a lot to be concerned about right now, honestly. And we're not even, think about this, guys. Where we're at in solar activity is going to be much worse 8 years from now, 10 years from now. We're going to continue to see this step down and these wild phenomena in weather and temperature swings. These are going to continue to happen over the next several years. But what Zharkova's paper and what we're trying to say as well is that it is going to be a very, very difficult ride once we approach the 2030s and beyond for at least another 20 to 30 years. It's going to affect our crops. It's already affected our crops. 14 million acres. And here we are, and I'm going to show you guys something in the GFS too with the temperatures. I mean, I don't mean to be the Debbie Downer here, but I am not liking what I'm seeing right now with some of the weather that we are expected to see in the middle part of the United States, in the Midwest, temperature-wise. Let's just hope that we find an Indian summer emerging somewhere. Severe storms hit with giant hail and tornadoes hit northern Italy, leaving at least 4 people dead. Powerful storms brought lightning, giant hail, and tornadoes to northern Italy over the weekend, causing significant material damage and leaving at least 4 people dead. Severe weather continued into Monday, August 31st, but the threat is now shifting into southeastern Europe, including Croatia, Hungary, Serbia, etc., where yellow and orange weather alerts are now in effect. And just taking a look at some of these images across the pond here in Italy. Again, highly charged particles, cosmic radiation, creating cloud nucleation. Look at this, guys. That green, again, more signs of a highly charged sky. Of course, any of this purple, another indication of highly charged particles being very present in the atmosphere. Another effect of grand solar minimum right here in front of your face. This is not this is not CO2 emissions. Hell, Italy is still partially shut down. Just insane. And then this is the kind of stuff that we're going to see from here and there. But when we get closer to 2028 and beyond, it's going to be the new norm times 3, maybe 4, and even worse. John Casey's book, Upheaval, predicts a major volcanic eruption between 2017 and 2037. And I say he has a good reason to expect that kind of a prediction, because what we know now from the magnetic field, well, we're expecting TSI dropping as well. Lots of things to focus in on, guys. And again, this channel is going to get more focused on prep. We'll find something to talk about, hopefully, every time we go on live, even if it takes 60 seconds, even if it's just pointing you to a direction of some good camping gear, or if it's about canning or growing or storage for food. Something's going to have to start happening, because we're doing a disservice. We're not doing enough of that, I don't feel. And that's my fault, and I apologize. I feel like that I have to say that because looking at the new information over the past several days, I feel like I've downplayed this a little bit. And when I hear 75% increase in cosmic radiation is on the way, when I hear that we're looking at a 70% reduction in the Earth's magnetic field, when I hear that we're going to be at near zero sunspots by 2032 and beyond all the way through 2040, okay, that's a little more intense than what we thought. And then, of course, today, wrapping it up with Zharkova's paper that confirms that we are going to see a Maunder minimum type grand solar minimum this time around. Series of coronal hole spark J1 minor geomagnetic storms. Again, we've already kind of talked about this, but it's in the news. Thank you to watchers.news for keeping track of this stuff. The 6.5 earthquake that hit in the mid-Atlantic ridge, that had everything to do with our current little solar storm. Again, Atlantic ridge happens more often than not, but again, you have to wonder if it's been initiated by a solar storm. And then again today, a 6.2, which I have to imagine that when we saw KP indices kick above 5 or kick at 5, also jolted seismic activity, and bam, we have a 6.2. Yesterday we had a 6.5. We are expecting solar wind to bombard the Earth's magnetic field over the next several days through September 2nd. So we will continue to watch that. All right, and this is not grand solar minimum related, but this is a request, and I'm just wondering if this is me or if anybody else is seeing this. But I talked to a grand solar minimum subscriber earlier today about this, and the information that's being shared, I feel like there is certain websites that probably should just please stick to climate natural weather cycles, papers on carbon dioxide, all that scientific stuff that revolves around the climate and whatnot. But this article here confirms that there's a lot of information that's being twisted and spun. And the Antifa.com directs you to Joe Biden's website. And in this article, they don't mention the real reason why it's happening. Somebody else registered, it has nothing to do with it, writing organization, we know it's days. Okay, so they think it's somebody else's website that forgot to change something. It's probably a domain cyber squatting that heard the term back in then, registered it. It's pretty common to happen. It is, but not quite yet. He or she hasn't been able to sell it. Again, they're thinking that this is an accident. He or she probably edited the parking landing page, added code, redirected. Yes, that's it. Yes. So, my bad, number 4. And at the end, it minimizes that's the real answer, by the way. What has happened here is that this website information is being redirected. That's it. It doesn't mean that Joe Biden signed up with Antifa to redirect his followers or their followers to his page. That's not what's going on. This is done purposely. And I bet you money it's not even real Antifa stuff. Someone who is playing politics. So just folks, I'm just saying, be careful on some of the tricks that we're seeing out there that's being played. And unfortunately, it gets into our community through pages that we rely on and trust. And this is a great website for climate resources. What's up with that? Anthony Watts, I highly recommend this page. I'm not downing it. I'm just saying, let's try to keep things on topic, because I've seen articles on here about COVID and now Biden in politics. And I tell you, folks, one of the most toxic things I've learned about this channel and this topic, you don't want to put politics involved. It really turns people off. And as I said, that 10 people dropped out of the room. And that's the proof. But I just want to point out, we got to be really careful, vet your information. With so much happening right now, I just hope that we could all stay on focus, because after the information that I've went over, there's enough to be concerned about with the climate and a lot less concerned with when it comes to politics. Now, you might say that if you're a Trump supporter, that if Biden wins, he's going to implement new Green Deal. That is a huge concern of mine, and that's scary. And then you could say, well, if Trump wins, then he's not going to protect the environment, and we're going to have dirty water. And there's something for everybody, I guess. No one's going to be 100% right with this. The hope is if Biden wins, I hope there's a way that we could block this Green New Deal stuff. The hope is if Trump wins, we can find a better way to have cleaner energy, but not do it to the point where it hurts the American public and makes expenses a little bit more than what they should be. Enough of my rant there. Let's go over to Weather Channel, because it talks about Tropical Depression 15 forms off the North Carolina coast, becomes a tropical storm Nana, but no threat to the U.S. And that is this storm right here in the video they show you. This storm right here is developed, and it's going off of to the northeast. It will not be a threat to the United States. But let's go ahead and read about it. Tropical Depression 15, as of 5 o'clock today, is moving at 35 miles an hour winds at northeast at 12 miles per hour. It does not list the pressure right now. It could be well above 1,000. Looking at the Atlantic Basin, also, we've got a system that is moving towards Central America and the tip of Mexico on the southern end. That could move into the Gulf. It just depends on how strong it is when it gets here, and if it could also stay together. And then the wave number 2 behind that one's aiming more at Cuba. That's the one we kind of thought that we probably should watch as our next system here. But number 1, the Caribbean tropical wave, a broad area of low pressure located in the central Caribbean, is also being tracked by the National Hurricane Center. The system is moving quickly westward through the Caribbean and is producing numerous showers and thunderstorms. And the Eastern Atlantic tropical wave, they're also watching that, and this is the number 2 one. This is the one I think that could have an impact on the Gulf. It says here, it's too early to know whether this system will eventually grow into a tropical depression or storm. we are also too far out in time to know whether it might affect land areas in the future. And it's important that these weather outlets announce that, because it keeps the hype and the fear porn to a minimal. So there's no use in even talking about number 2. It's too far out, but we can at least mention it, that folks need to be aware. And also, go to Mike's weather page to follow all your hurricane information. We use resources from his page to track our storms as well. Very highly recommended site. And let's go to GFS, take a look at our outlook, which hopefully it loaded up this time. I had a problem with it earlier. And again, for the next 7 days, the Midwest and the Northeast are looking at a pretty rainy pattern. And also, once we get to September, right around the 7th, we're going to start seeing high pressure dominate and cooler air filter in through the Great Lakes and into the Northeast by mid-September here in the north. And look, the Northern Plains and the Great Lakes will already see it. Some interesting features showing up later on this month here. Lots of rain, like I said, through Ohio and the Northeast. We're going to see about 3 major systems move through here by the middle of September. And behind it, some pretty cool air for this time of year as well. And that high pressure really just settles down, keeps things dry. And interesting enough, what's happening down in the Gulf here, because of this high pressure, which is keeping all of this low pressure moisture in the Gulf to the south. Is this the storm that we're watching that's going to be here near the end of the southern tip of Mexico? Did it get across land and trying to reorganize? It just depends on what our temperatures are in that Gulf. But that is 16 days out. So all I can say right now is that we are in peak hurricane season. We need to be aware and watch these tropical waves. But a lot of these storms as of right now, and part of the reason why we're not seeing much development in the Atlantic is because we just got another plume of dry air that is floating across from Africa right now. So that is also going to help keep storms at bay for the next couple of days. That could change. Looking at high temperatures into September, again, summer hanging around in the south and on the East Coast and in the Southwest. But if you live in the Northern Plains states, the Great Lakes and the Midwest and the Northeast, awesome fall-like weather already with us here by the early part of September. And temperatures at the nighttime continue to plummet as we get around September 8th. Cold enough for snow in Minnesota just about by September 9th. That's next Wednesday, not this coming one, but the following Wednesday. Much of the country across the Central Plains states, the Northern Plains, and the Great Lakes will be in the 40s and 30s for lows. A little bit of warm up here on the 9th and the 10th. That's what we call ridging. And we'll see that along the East Coast and the I-95 corridor. But behind it, some sharper, cooler air. Look at these are daytime highs. Detroit, Michigan, 51. Watch out there, Scott. Matt, you'll be looking at temperatures right around the 69-degree mark in parts. And then look at this. These are daytime highs across Ohio. Toledo, 54 degrees. Medina, Cleveland, Ohio, near 57 degrees. Western Pennsylvania, 54. South Bend, Indiana, 54 degrees. September 11th. So we will see much cooler air for the East Coast, the Midwest, and the Northeast by the middle of September. And these are very, very cool temperatures. We see a little bit of a rebound here by the 15th of September. Central Plains states, this might be our minor Indian summer that I was hoping for to help keep temperatures out of that danger zone. But folks, nonetheless, we are looking at temperatures in the 60s and 70s across most of the Midwest and the Northeast, Tennessee as well. I mean, what more could you ask for as far as weather goes as that? And also, I want to point out too, there's that cooling in the Gulf. That's from that low pressure system that's moving in through the southern tip of Mexico. And coming into the Gulf, the waters will be a lot cooler from it. So it just depends. It may not be able to gain any traction, and we might get off the hook with just a tropical depression of some sorts. bringing in lots of rain. But again, the track on that storm, if we were to follow this, and I've said this from time to time, the GFS likes to flash signals of where future storms are going to appear. And we could see a rainmaker in the middle of September somewhere in the Gulf around the Louisiana coast again, unfortunately. But way, way, way too far out to really know one way or the other at this point. Let's check out some weather action here in the UK and Europe. I know it's been a while since I've covered it, and I feel like I've neglected my brothers and sisters across the pond. So here we go. We start on the 3rd of September. That's Thursday for some reason. But lots of rain and moisture coming across the UK, across Norway as well, into Germany, parts of Europe. So UK is going to be a wet pattern for the next several days in the beginning of September. Pretty fair across Italy, the Alps. Nothing too major to worry about. Across France, nothing bad. Here we got a major low pressure storm that's looking to impact the UK region on September 12th, 2020. Now, that is about 12 days away, but GFS indicates that we could see a powerful storm that will come in from the southeast. And yes, you folks will be affected. Wales, Ireland, UK. Looks like we'll get a pretty decent late season storm to bring plenty of moisture in. But look at this, just behind it, just streaming tons of rain behind that. And by the middle part of the month, it's looking like we're going to see rain in parts of France, Germany, all across through Denmark as well. And finally, the UK dries out for just 24 hours. And then right before we get to the next run of our forecast, it looks like we got a pretty decent shot at more showers coming in. So a very, very wet pattern on the way for the UK and the following in Europe. Now, let's take a look at what we might see temperature-wise. And a lot of it looks pretty similar to what we're looking at. Get this thing to upload here. A lot of 60s and 70s, 80s in Spain and Portugal. Italy, it is still pretty hot, but we're starting to see temperatures in the Alps dropping cold enough for snow. Across Germany, we're looking at 50s and 60s. Daytime highs in the 60s and 70s across Europe. UK, nice weather there. 60s and 70s Fahrenheit for you guys. I know for you it's 19, 20 degrees. But for us Americans, we'll know it better in the 60s and 70s. This is beautiful fall weather aside from all the rain. And then we get deeper into September when we get more rain. And you'll notice the temperature is getting cooler at night, cooler during the day. And a lot of that has to be from a lot of this rain that we're seeing. And then we'll get to September 12th, where we'll see a significant cooling from that low pressure system that will be bringing tons of rain, cloud coverage, wind, and temperatures hanging around the 40s and 50s and 60s as well for you in the UK and Ireland as well. The rest of Europe looking pretty good. That really, really hot stuff is starting to push further away from France and Germany and parts of the Alps as summer is starting to wind down. But the UK and some of the European nations will see fall-like temperatures here in the very near future. Too bad places like Spain and Portugal and others will not be experiencing the quite cool, crisp air that will be moving through eventually, and hopefully stays comfortable for you guys. But lots of moisture on the way for the UK from what we can see moving forward. Mari, would you like to come over here and say hello before we take off for the night?
Absolutely, Jake. There's so much to say. I'd like to welcome Michael Melcher, our newest paid subscriber. Dennis Adams did a super chat. Thank you, Dennis. I've seen all kinds of other supporters in the chat. We got, let's see, Edmund Fleming and Jesse and Matt.
Hey, Jesse. Hello, Matt.
Pizza Hut.
Pete.
I saw John Burdick in there.
Knife
Neo's
collector.
in there. Starlight says everything you said encourages them to can, dehydrate, freeze, grow as much fruit as possible, be frugal, pay off his bills. Preparation is the key word. Frugal,
very, very important word there too. Absolutely. Mari, is that all you got?
That's all I got.
Well, thank you, Mari. As all, she is the one wrangling all y'all in the chat, making sure everybody is safe and having a good time as far as the experience here at the Grand Solar Minimum channel. If you like what we do, we are subscriber supported. Become a member at our YouTube page if you're on your PC or Apple Mac. Also, you'll see a link for the Teespring store for getting your shirts, hoodies, stickers, whatever you desire. Become a Patreon as well. We appreciate all the support that we get from you guys on a daily basis. We hear from you, emails, Facebook groups. Again, we're everywhere. Twitter, Facebook. We hope to see you around sometime soon. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night with another Grand Solar Minimum news update. Until then, everyone, be safe, and we will talk soon.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.